right. Welcome to Simple Healthy Life, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations on topics that we find interesting. And today, I thought it'd be kind of interesting, MJ, as as of this week, you've opened up our labs officially, getting some memberships rolling in, and obviously, I've been and have been really thoroughly enjoying the space and what you offer there, and it made me think about the idea that you had and bringing that to inception and all the little things in between, which a lot of people don't see. Obviously, like we talk, a little bit more frequently about those kinds of things. So I saw every little roadblock. Maybe not even I saw every roadblock, but I saw many of the roadblocks in the way, and there was a lot. But yet here you are now in a place where it probably finally feels like you're past the thick of it and into new territory. And so I figured this would be a good topic to discuss, like bringing ideas to fruition, bringing ideas that we have in our minds through action into reality, and maybe centric to building a business. But yeah, I guess like how do you feel now that it's finally up and running?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I feel good. I feel accomplished.
Feels good.
I do. I feel like there's so many next things to do and happen. I'm nowhere near where, the end goal, but I feel like this was a cool milestone to take something that was just simply an idea, something that Corey and I used to do in our backyard in a bucket full of ice, and bring it to fruition, so that other people can enjoy it, is really a cool feeling. I'm reminded when you kind of opened, this gentleman, John Walsh, we mentioned him a few times. He's kind of been a bit of a mentor figure to me, and he said something to me one day. He said, everybody has ideas. And he said, talking about himself, he said, but I'm the guy that brings them to life. And now he's built many different businesses and done a whole bunch of different cool stuff. And that stuck with me because I am the guy that has ideas. I'm Boston-law. For my whole life, I've had ideas. What about this or what about that? And for this one, we went through the process of bringing it to life. And that process was extensive. It took us, in fact, 2 days ago, I got a Facebook memory of 2 years before that. On that day was me hosting a breathwork event and a couple people sitting in horse troughs outside and buckets full of ice. And it took us essentially from then to now to build our labs.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that idea, and I know that Jason Caldas kind of talked a little bit about that too, and we had him on about how he, a lot of like his gym started with boot camps in Buttonwood Park, right? Like all his whole empire essentially kind of started there, and those are the things that I think that people often miss, like how seemingly inconsequential is it to hold a workshop, right? But that's actually what built momentum and community to get to where you are now. If you were to just like randomly open up our lab, say you had the means and knowledge, I don't necessarily know that. One, I guess you wouldn't really have the knowledge, but say you had the means, you would be lacking the experience, the knowledge, and the community to then actually like bring that together, right? And through your little workshops, and you did plenty of them, that really did do something for you.
Definitely. Yeah, it did. It taught me quite a bit. What it taught me most of anything was that there's a market. And people leaving those workshops would tell me, or the next day they would say, man, I felt so good after that. And I was like, I started to look around and see like where are people doing this, right? High-end spas. But it was more like well, I go once a month with my wife, or I go like every few months. I wanted to bring something where people could literally say to themselves, this is something I want to add to my life. Let's do it 3 times a week. Let's do it. Like, what's the science say? And what's really cool is a lot of people, because it's become kind of almost mainstream in some ways, people are now saying like, okay, well, what's the science say? And 4 to 7 times a week in the sauna, 11 minutes a day, 11 minutes a week in the cold tub. Like, okay, well, if that's what it says, that's what I want to do. And we built a place where people can do that now, which I'm really proud of.
Right.
It's fun to see people experience the stuff that we've experienced, and see that the look on their face, when they overcome the cold, and just hear how positive they speak of the space and their time there. It's really fun to see people talking and telling their friends, like, oh my God, this is what I did yesterday. That whole thing is more than I anticipated. I didn't expect to get the joy out of it that I've been getting. Even just this we've been open now, soft open for only a couple weeks, and really just seeing those people experience it for the first time, or maybe they've done it before, but the first time they're really like, wow, look at me, I did it, and that's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it's cool to hear you finding a lot of joy in that too, because ultimately that's where it came from. Even if that wasn't the primary like conscious motivator, that's why you started doing workshops to begin with. I mean, you weren't making big bucks on those workshops; they weren't paying the bills, although I think they were paid. Right? They were clearly paid, but nonetheless, I mean, I don't think that they were world class, payments, right? But you wanted to bring it to more people and just spread that passion, and I think that's where it starts. It's actually kind of interesting as we think about it now, because it started with an idea, this idea that I like this, and this is kind of cool, and I feel the benefits, and so if I feel the benefits, then maybe other people would. Where did you get inspired? Like, where did that first idea come from? Like the idea of, hey, I kind of like this, and maybe I can hold workshops too.
I'm gonna blow your mind right now.
Oh, let's hear it.
You were there.
Nice.
Yes, you were there.
Nice.
I actually remember it. Mike McCarthy held a breathwork and cold workshop at Soulflower.
Yeah.
And I attended, and I had already been into breathwork, and I had already been into cold, but never really put them together. And I experienced that for the first time in that little tiny room. And I was like, man, this is something that I could totally add to my athletes yoga program. Like, I'm already doing it on Sunday mornings. Let's see if I can start to add a little bit of this breath work. So I started to add the breath work to the end of athletes yoga, and then realized that you can put it all together with the cold. And, one thing led to another, and one thing led to the first of one other million things, and then here we are. So, wow. But I didn't think about that until today. But yeah, you were in the room.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy, because that was, I don't believe that was the first time we met, but that was, no, because I think I met you in Middleborough like one other time, and we had like a decent conversation. But that was the first time we like had a real conversation, and I remember thinking, hey, MJ is pretty cool, nice vibe. So that is really interesting too, because that was definitely a little out of both of our wheelhouses to go to this. Why did you end up going?
I don't know. I think it was just something where I was going to support Mike, I'm pretty sure. He had come up to Brick Road a few times, and I was interested in that type of stuff. And I think that was it. I was just going to show some support and challenge myself a little bit. Yeah, that's, and I hadn't thought about it. So this is, as you guys know, we don't really think about or talk much about these topics beforehand, because we want them to be genuine and authentic and And that's a genuine, authentic response. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
It's what a strange thing to have happened.
Huh. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that idea though, like the idea of like these little things that you don't know, you know, all right, you could have easily not supported Mike in that day. I mean, you, as far as I know, I mean, sorry if he's listening, I doubt it, but I don't think you like are super close to Mike. You just kind of, you know about him. You've trained with him a couple times, so like loose acquaintance, right? And just you could have easily been like, hey, I'll get the next one, especially because it was a little out of your way. I mean, it was like 30, 45, 40 minutes. You know, it was out of your way. But that little thing, that little experience, not only connected you and I. That was like basically the start of our connection. But it also propelled that thought or generated the thought like, I can start incorporating some of these tactics too. If Mike can do it, why can't I do that?
Yeah, that's interesting. And then as I started to build it and started to notice, like I said, the way people responded to it was really what kept me motivated to keep going. And then I've always wanted to have a space that made it feel more official. It's like, it's one thing to bring people in and invite them to try it, sitting outside in a bucket full of ice, which is sometimes even more fun in my opinion. But it's another thing to build something where people are like, wow, this is really beautiful space. And what I think is funny about this journey is I am not somebody that it would put themselves down as like building spaces. Like I could walk into a room 100 times and not notice, the floor, the rug, the paint, the ceiling, the lighting. So when we started this process, and we actually, it's like I went from an area where I thought I knew everything there was to know, right? And that's kind of an overstatement, but like I thought, okay, I understand the way that the body works, I understand the breath, I understand what the cold does, I understand how the sauna works, I understand, all of these things. But now you take all of that stuff you understand and then put it aside and then go and learn about what it takes to waterproof a floor, what it takes to install a sauna that is now an infrared sauna. One of the cool things I learned about was what it takes to build our intentional rinse. We have that valve that turns it off after 1 minute automatically, so you can really spend 1 minute like with your intention, with your thoughts, and like what that looks like, and how to go and source one of those valves and find it. And these are the things that I just had no idea about.
Right.
Then once we got through that, which we just got through that after a year of building permits, which I knew nothing about, and inspectors and inspections, which I knew nothing about, then you get to add in website building in software development and finding the right software provider to make sure that it does the things that you want it to do. And these are all areas that until I did it, I had no idea about. Marketing, thankfully. With that part, I still don't really know much about it. They farmed that one out pretty quickly, which I'm grateful for. I know what I like and I know what I don't like, but I still struggle with, what to do next in that regard.
Right. It's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I love to hear about that. But yeah, because you didn't in no world did you start by saying, I'm gonna make our labs, I'm gonna make this space, and then I'm just gonna bring it together. Like that's kind of what it appears to be, right? Like even the well-informed observer is looking in and be like, yeah, he set a goal, build our labs, and then brought it to life. Yeah, hard, but did it, right? Used some money, had some money saved up, all that jazz. But that's not actually what the pathway was. It didn't start with that, like, let me do this. It started with the little like novelty searching, right? Like the new experiences. I read this book. I don't know if I shared this with you. I think I did. Yeah, this book is called. I never remembered the name, but now I remember. It's called Why Greatness Can't Be Planned. And it was such a cool idea. It was one of these books that like really, the main thesis really engaged me, and it was that goals don't work like that. Goals don't work like, yeah, let me build a spa and then bring it to fruition and, all is good. Goals work by taking one little novelty searching step at a time, and you can't actually see the next step until you make that first step. It's like the fogged bridge, right? Like the bridge is fogged. You can't see, you can see only the step in front of you, and once you take that, then you can see the next couple steps that you could take. Then you take that one, then you see the next couple steps. In no world could you possibly envision start to finish a realistic goal that's right for you and makes sense and will actually work. And that's so your first step onto the fogged bridge was, let me go support Mike, right? And it's just a really captivating thought.
Yeah, and it's never linear.
No.
Right? That's what so many times people just believe that other people had this linear rise, right? It's like you see them and they make it look easy, or what's kind of fun too is like, as you're rising, and I'm not saying I'm at the top, but as you're, progressing through this thing, those things that happen, like I now know a lot about what it takes to waterproof a floor on a second floor of a building, right? So now someone's like, hey, how would you do that? I'm like, oh, well, this is, from personal experience, this is what I would do. 6 months ago, I had no idea. But now someone would be like, wow, geez, Mike really knows a lot about that. Like, yeah, but I had to take the time to learn about it. And that felt very not linear. I remember the day I was like, I didn't even think about flooring. Again, I'm the guy that wouldn't tell you if there was a rug in the room, like literally. And now I'm like, oh wow, okay, I gotta go learn like what kind of floor there is, how expensive is it, which one's cost effective, which one's non-stick, and does that matter? These are all just things that you learn along the way that no one can really tell you.
Right.
And I can already tell that there's a ton of stuff left to learn, right? Like right now we're in this like booking section, of the game. Like, how do you book something that requires people to be kind of in their bathing suit and make as much of the clientele, the potential clientele, feel as comfortable as possible, while knowing that some people love to do this with their significant other. So you can't really just make it men and women. Some people just won't do it if the opposite sex is in the space. So like, what do you do there? How do you do that? Like, there's no roadblock. There's no roadmap for that. You got to identify and figure out what that looks like. And I don't have the answers yet, but that's just part of the next step in this process.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has to happen that way, one step at a time, right? If you got hung up on the booking process when you first started, you would never have put the effort into the floor. You would have forgot about the waterproof floor, and then that would have been a disaster, right? Yeah. And that's what people, I think, often try to do is they try to set these goals and plan everything out and in between, but you can't possibly know the problems that you're going to run into. And if you think you do, I mean, one, it's a little ignorant, but two, you're probably going to spend all the time on the wrong thing.
Totally. And then you got to enlist people to help you, right? Like, find people you trust, work through that, build your own community. And that's the second thing that happens when you're building this stuff. Like, you end up with a pretty good community, right? We had a major hiccup with our electrician, right? He was a great guy by all accounts, but he just was stubborn in one regard and blew up one of the tubs before we opened. I mean, like, the motherboard just fried it.
Oh my God.
I mean, like, that's enough to make you go home at night and lay in your bed and wonder, right? What's going, like, am I cursed? Is this what's going on here? But you figure out how to solve for it. You become an expert now. Thank you to Cold Tubs for spending 6 hours on the phone with me, walking through how to remove a motherboard in one of their tubs and put it back in. All right, so I'm not an expert on electricity or motherboards, but I can take this one apart and put it back together. Right? These are the things that at first glance seemed like the worst thing in the world. And now, okay, well, it's just another hurdle that we had to overcome.
All right.
You know, and we now have a better, different electrician. Not to knock on him, he just can't. We just, got to go a different direction. That's just an example, one of 100 over the course of this last, basically, year. I remember going through, and once we figured out that we wanted to put this thing in a gym. We didn't want it to be standalone. We wanted it to have, at least be surrounded by a community of people that were probably interested in it. I remember going to these different gyms and talking to the different gym owners, and kind of like, they probably thought I was crazy. Well, I think it's valuable for these reasons. And then probably went to 10 different gyms before we found Jason.
Wow.
And, worked. Corey jokes like I went and worked at the YMCA, just personal training, just to kind of understand the ins and outs of the YMCA, because we initially thought maybe we could build them for the YMCA, and then we found Millennium, and we found Jason, and we feel like we found the right spot.
Did you knew him beforehand though, right?
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Oh.
I decided that I was interested in doing this, and that I would move over and do my personal training, because of my personal training clients, out of Millennium, and I would bring them over there, and we kind of started the process of where in the building it might work and what that looks like. And really, kudos to Jason for just believing in us. And then we figured out the space that we were going to do it in, figured out the terms that we would, agreed upon, and then, started the process of actually building.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And all those, yeah. Imagine building your road. Imagine now going back and writing out the full plan, everything that you did to from the hosting the workshops and these different, and however many workshops, and then from making the decision to evaluating which cold tub and saunas to buy. Imagine writing all that out. You would never stop writing. It's
what you sent this to me, and I'm glad it's coming up now. It's probably not the best. We can cut this out if people don't want to hear about it. But
we don't cut anything.
I know we never do. We talked about intuition, and you talked about this. There's a word for it. There was a scientific word for it.
Somatic marker theory.
Somatic marker theory. Yeah. Thank you. And because that's come up a few different times, but that's really a great example of this path.
Yeah.
That somatic marker theory. You're right. I couldn't have written every one of these steps down, and I'm glad I didn't. I do have a plan, right? I do have a written down, bullet pointed out plan and how we're gonna build these things and then get to 10.
Sure.
Our goal is to build 10 of these things, and there's some high level milestones, which is why we're talking about this today, because we just crossed one, right? Be open, build one, get going, see what that looks like, see what kind of revenue it generates, see what kind of community and buzz and all that. And we don't know. That's the part that remains to be seen. And then we have some kind of financial markers to say, when we get to here, then we're going to try to build 2 more. And we do have a plan to say we want to build 2 more next, and then we'll have one, have 3, and then we'll try to build the other 6 or 7 kind of at the same time is the idea. But who knows? Who knows where that will go? I really can't tell you. In fact, I can't even tell you where my thought is to build number 2. Right. We just haven't been focused on it. But it's in there. It's in the high-level plan.
Right, yeah. Yeah, somatic marker theory is basically the physiologic theory for intuition. And so what it says is that our subconscious brain will mark patterns and learnings, I suppose, with bodily feeling. So the gut feeling, right? Why sometimes we lean into that gut feeling? Why does it just feel right, and why is it right a lot of the time? And so, this was studied and written by a man named Antonio Damasio, and they've done a couple studies there that we've talked about, like the Iowa gambling task, where basically they gave they had two separate groups of people, one with damage to their ventral pre-medial cortex, I believe it is, the VMPFC or something like that. An area of the brain that is responsible for kind of mediating these intuitive decisions versus people who are much healthier, had a healthy brain. They gave them a gambling game, and the gambling game was rigged. There was a couple rigged decks in each of these groups. And the people with the healthy brains were able to kind of like intuitively pick up, I don't really like playing this game from that deck and this deck, but I'll draw from that deck. And they can't tell you why. They can be like, well, there's 3 jokers in there and 10 whatever. But the people who had the damaged brain, they didn't sense any difference. They couldn't really like logistically like explain why one deck wasn't performing well, well as the others. And so that demonstrated the point that there is an area for a brain that dictates non-explainable, not logical, to us, decision making. Another good example of this would be like switching jobs, right? I mean, if you were to write down, you got a job offer, and you were to write down every exact possible future possibility, I suppose, for that job switch. Well, I switch jobs, and then maybe I get paid a little bit more, and that's good. And then also my commute's a little bit longer. So what does that look like? And what happens if I make more money? Then how do I feel about that? And then like I lose all my coworker friends, or maybe I don't come into contact. Like if you were to actually write every single detail down, it would take forever. And so there is part of that decision-making process within us that says, okay, here's the big, overarching ideas, the high-level ideas, like I get paid more money, commute's a little bit longer, but also it just feels right. It feels like the time, right? And we use that all the time, but we don't necessarily give credit to intuition. In fact, a lot of people think intuition is this like very like hokey thing when in fact it really is demonstrated by not only our actions but observable science.
Yeah, now that I've heard it a couple times, I'm never going to forget that somatic marker theory, because it's so consistently true. One of the things that you have to do for those of you that are out there that are like listening to this because you find us interesting, which I'm glad you do, I'll offer some findings that I have found, right? And one of the things that you definitely want to do when you're trying to bring an idea to life is play with it, right? Remember that you're not going to have all the answers, and write down your high-level plan. In 5 years, I would like to be doing this with this, and then work backwards, right? Everybody kind of says that, but what I'm getting to is if you need money to do this, you have to have a business plan. And essentially, just don't look at that business plan as line item A and line item B and line item C. I would say, and this is what I have come to realize, look at that business plan as convincing yourself this is going to work. Like, how is this really going to work? Like, forget about line item A and B and C. Like, write down how this is really going to work. And once you can do that and convince yourself this is really going to work, then you can start to work and try to convince the bank that this is going to work. And maybe there is some specific line items that they're after, but or go to your friends and colleagues, and don't look for people to tell you yes or no. That's the second thing that I would say. There's so many times where you bring an idea to somebody and they have, let's just pretend for a second that they're a robot and not in a mood, right? They're going to say, that'll never work. Yeah. Here's the reasons it won't work.
People are brutal, man.
And it's like, okay, well, that's not going to work in your eyes, right? Like, so many times I heard from people like, people won't do that. You're not going to do that. People don't do that. Where do they do that around here? I'm like, well, they don't. Well, yeah, well, those people don't do it. I'm like, okay, well, or I'll walk them through the process of like, all right, you go into our intentional rinse, and then you're going to get into our cold tub. Like, no, people don't. Yeah, I can't even take a cold shower. Okay, awesome. So it's not for you. That's okay. just we get hung up on our circle and whether or not they want to support it. And thankfully, my circle's amazing, yourself included, like very supportive. But for people starting out, don't look for the answers out externally.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, because people are brutal, and they're not like overtly brutal too. Like sometimes, like I can imagine a lot of people who might insinuate that language without actually saying it that way. Like, oh, it's not going to work. But that's the message that they're saying. They think they're being coy with it or whatever, but they're really they're really not. And yeah, you want people who shoot you straight, but also are optimists in some sense, and that's a choice, right? I mean, yeah, you could easily say people don't don't jump in the cold tub or don't cold shower, but you could also say they should, and maybe I'll be the one to convince them to try it, and then they'll convince themselves after they muster up the courage to try it. And so I think that's a great example. So being very cautious of your environment for sure. I wonder what do you think for the people who are kind of looking to be self-sufficient in that way, own a business, and maybe they don't even know what they would do. Drawing back on like maybe how yours started, what would you tell someone? Like what should people do to maybe get more into the mindset or more experience in things that they enjoy, things that they're passionate about? Like where do people start?
I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but did we talk about Jeff Bezos, his journey through developing Amazon? Bezos. Sorry.
Yeah. No, we didn't know.
Okay, so he had a good job,
Yeah.
and before he started, and he went to his boss and he presented this Amazon internet bookstore,
Yeah.
and the guy looked at him and was like, "What are you doing? You got this great job. Like, what could you possibly hope to accomplish that's better than this job with your Amazon bookstore online?"
Right.
So he went home and he came up with this theory that was essentially it was regret. It was his regret matrix. Which thing will I regret less when I'm older? And he said, like, when I turn 60, which path will I have less regret with? And he said, I'll have less regret by trying this path than I would if I never tried it. And I think that's a really interesting statement. And I think it's a really interesting thing for people to sit with for a few minutes, right? Don't try to come up with the answer, but just sit and say, like, I've had this idea rattling in my brain forever. And which way, if I just let it die, go about my business, I'll be sitting there thinking, man, I wonder what would have happened if I had just tried. And I came to the conclusion, I think it's time to try. I think, I had support system, amazing partner, and just, decided to try. So number one, do that little regret exercise. Number two, remember that, to your point, like the next X amount of steps, months, years in my case, you're going to be on that fog-covered bridge, right? You're going to know step one, then you're going to see step two. Number three, write down, right? There's some stats about the X% better chance of achieving your goal when you write it down, right? Just write it down. Write it down, put it somewhere, look at it, and then just stay consistent. Consistently say to yourself, it's not about having this thing tomorrow. Although when you start to get a little further along, you're going to be like, I wish this thing was tomorrow. Okay. But it's about just continuing on. And then number four, don't listen to the naysayers, right? Work hard in silence and just keep going. And number five, I'm at number five. If it does fail, then so be it, right? I'm not saying I want it to fail. I'm not saying I'm even be okay with it failing. But luckily, I learned a lot through the process. And I built a pretty cool community in the process. And that stuff will happen to you as well. So don't let fear dictate the way that you live your life. And don't let fear be the thing in the moment that pushes you towards a path you know you're going to regret more. Those are all my super deep findings so far.
I love it.
On the day we just opened. Some type of expert here. Don't kid yourself. We got a lot of stuff to figure out. I'm glad that people are liking it. One thing I'm pretty proud of too is we kind of reimagined the pricing model. I don't know if there's any other pricing model like this, but it's essentially a monthly payment and a drop-in fee, to get people to feel like they're part of the community, so we can reduce their drop-in fee cost. But still, money's energy, and we want you to pay the money and put it in towards what you're trying to accomplish. And I haven't really seen that from anybody else, so I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Yeah, I think it's more than fair. You go to any other spa-like place, and you're probably paying the monthly fee in one go. And this is a place that you can pretty much go whenever and improve on your own terms. And these are the little skills, right? You talk about all the little skills in there, the learning about flooring, learning about the electricity, learning about, lighting, learning about ambiance, learning about saunas, learning about cold tubs. I mean, all those little skills, it's such a compelling idea. We've talked about it a number of times, but those little micro skills, and as you go in and challenge yourself with the cold, right? You're learning discomfort tolerance, right? Is there a better skill than that? I mean, I would argue focus and discomfort tolerance, probably the two biggest skills that anyone could learn and work on and develop, and probably get whatever you want. I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine too bad. I mean, maybe interpersonal relationship building, which then encompasses hundreds of skills there too, being open, being vulnerable, being clear, being communicative, being a good listener, but I mean, I think about that often, and so that's why I love to practice discomfort, and I have a couple different ways that I do that. And people say, well, that's silly, that's uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. It doesn't get easier. It just gets more tolerable. I'm going to do a little video for you guys yesterday, and that's one of the points that I said is they get in the cold time. I'm always like, this is going to suck. And it does. And you know what? But I get better at tolerating that suck. Clearly you could see that. You could see when, you versus someone brand new into cold tub, you're like, this sucks. And you get in, you chill, and you're controlling your breathing. It's fine. Right. Versus someone new, they're all tense. They're barely breathing. They're want to leave in 1 second. And, it's not to say that you're not better or worse than each other. One person just has more discomfort tolerance to that, maybe physical discomfort. Right. So, I think as you go into these settings, one, you practice that in the cold tub. And there's myriad health benefits to the cold tub, and all of that's been well studied. But two, then the sauna, which I'd argue feels great. I don't know if that's necessarily a discomfort tolerance thing, especially right after the cold tub. What a feeling. This is the best feeling in the world. But then there's myriad health benefits there too, the heat shock proteins and blood flow and reduction in all-cause and cardiac mortality. I think it's such a good space that you've put together because it combines both mental resilience and physical health.
Yeah, thank you. That's very well said. That's exactly what we were after. That's the R labs in all of it, right? We couldn't settle on just one thing. We were we want to help it be better for you physically. Well, we want to find a space that's better for you mentally. Well, we want to create a community. We're how do we name this thing? And we were sitting on the beach, and we had started to think, and our labs, and it's definitely a play. You guys have heard me say this before. It's definitely a play on Boston, right? Being from Boston, because we don't have our R's. And But it really is. It's that resilience, that refresh, that reset. It's all of the R's that you can think of. And now the cool part for me is building the community and teaching people a little bit about sauna culture. Right, sauna culture is kind of a cool space because, for those of you that don't know, like in the sauna traditionally, it's not necessarily like a whisper policy, but it's a leave your stuff out of the sauna policy, right? So many times we meet people like, oh, what do you do, right? That's not a sauna question. Whatever you do is out there. It's someplace else, right? It's how are you today?
Yeah.
You know, it's really just like keep your conversation to like inside the four walls, you know, and that's kind of a cool thing. And people are starting to feel that and like that and be comfortable, and it builds community a lot faster, right? You're not like, oh, that's Mike the plumber. You're like, oh, that's Mike, you know, and you kind of see people for who they are, which is really a cool thing.
Yeah, I love that. I'm excited for that community that you have to be built up, and you get to see the regulars and to make connections there, and expand the relationships, because that's important. But I also think that you kind of hit the nail on the head with those the 5 things that people could benefit from walking through, and reminding themselves of, if you want to change. I mean, maybe first step is to try something new, right? Do support the friend, right? Be engaged with the community, go meet someone new and see what they're into. And then you don't know that, oh, well, maybe I like that thing that they introduced me to. Worm charming. Did you guys know that worm charming is a hobby? I found that out the other day.
Explain.
So they go to these worm charming basically is when you take like some sort of object, and there's plenty of different objects that people will use and find that they enjoy, but you go to a ground, like a wet grassy ground area, and you make this like rhythmic kind of pattern, sound wave pattern, using the objects, or you tap the ground in a specific way, and then the worms like rise to the surface, and depending on the objects that you use and your touch and your skill, you can actually get potentially hundreds of worms coming up to the top. And they have these like big competitions, and they put like 100 people on a field, and they cut the field into like little squares. And so when you go and you sign up for one of these things, you go and you get your bucket, your worm bucket, you bring your worm charming ingredients, kind of like snake charmer, they use the flute or whatever, like worm charming kind of instruments, and then you go to this field, and when they sound the alarm, everyone gets to beating their drum or shaking their rattle or whatever that whatever the object of choice is, and they start coaxing the worms to the top. And when they come to the top, they pluck them, put them in their bucket, and then at the end they count who got the most worms. And I just found that to be like astounding. Who would have thought?
Wow. There's so many things that I want to say there. I mean, I'm immediately taken to the movie Dune, right? Like that's like makes sense to me for some reason. Yeah. And then I started thinking about like a stocked pond. Mm-hmm. Like, do people put worms in there? Like they go out like a week before and they just dump them. I
don't know. Perhaps they do. I don't know.
But then the thing that resonated me with the most is it's actually something that Rogan said. He said, there are people that dedicate their whole lives to shit you've never even heard of.
Right.
And that's definitely one for me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I'm not saying people dedicate their whole lives to it, but they find it interesting. They find it interesting enough to group together and band together and create a community.
Yeah.
That is, I learned something new today.
Right. And it's so true. Yeah. I mean, everyone has their thing, like a lot of people don't know what jiu-jitsu is. And here I am doing jiu-jitsu, 50% of my life is jiu-jitsu, right? Which is like nuts. I mean, maybe not 50%, but it's a huge portion of it. And, I mentioned that and people are like, oh, okay, so yeah, my son does karate. I'm like, okay.
I do recognize that.
And so, yeah, I think it's super cool. And yeah, I mean, just put the time in to find something new, try something new, novelty search, and bringing back that book, Why Greatness Can't Be Planned. They've actually they made some correlations to AI, and what they know about AI and large language models is that it actually doesn't learn best with objective based goals. So if you give an AI like some sort of model to like a maze or something, you give some AI model a maze and you say, all right, go find the end of this maze, right? It will know where the end is and it knows where the start is and it tries to go through the maze. And a lot of these models get stuck at the closest point to the exit of the maze, but get stuck on a wall, right? And so as they run their simulations, it might eventually find, but through many of the simulations, it actually gets stuck at the closest point towards the exit. So you're thinking, okay, if I want to go from point A to point B, the easiest way is a straight line, just go right there. And that's what a lot of like AI models will do. But actually, they find that the models that learn the fastest are the ones programmed for novelty search. So find new things. And so each repetition, it's not getting stuck on the same wall because it went from point A to point B, the shortest route from point A to point B. It actually looked for something new along the way. And it solves the maze much faster when it's looking for new things, because eventually, as you look for enough new things, you find the thing that you're looking for to begin with, and that maybe you didn't even know you were looking for. And so, it just I think there is strong parallels between how you engaged with novelty search through the whole way. Again, you didn't say, I'm developing R labs, and then go and join Mike McCarthy's, tub and then do your workshops. And it wasn't planned out that immediately, but you did through each step of your journey. You looked for new things and new experiences, even if that was subconsciously searching, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful. How I found jiu-jitsu was very similar to that. I was into the gym, like just strength training, bodybuilding kind of stuff for many years. I got so sick of it. I was in there like 6 days a week and for years and years. And I just, I was done with it. I was over it, right? I had met whatever kind of potential I probably was going to get there, and I lost the love for it. And then Alicia was actually, after college, was looking for some sort of like fitness classy kind of thing, and she stumbled upon like martial arts as a potential role for that. And so she tried one or two different things, and then eventually kind of like landed on boxing, right? And so she's like going to these like little boxing classes, and she kept being like, hey, you should come check it out. I'm like, nah, boxing stinks. She kept saying, all right, come on, check it out. No. She did that for months, and eventually she stopped asking. And so I said, hey, can I check out boxing? So go check out boxing, right? And it is cool. It was fun. We enjoyed it. We did a good bit. Got some good workouts, got some good techniques, all that jazz. And then was always seeing Muay Thai, kickboxing happening on the side corner of the same gym. And I figured, well, I like boxing. Might as well try kickboxing too. All right, good. Try that. And that was enjoyable too. So we kind of like jumped between the both of it. And then as we were leaving those classes, guess who was coming on the mats? The jiu-jitsu folks. And so I would like every day I would kind of like see a little bit of them like rolling around, doing a little wrestling and submissions. I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. It's kind of a cool idea. Now that I see it, it does look interesting. And so one day I just was like, all right, well, let's try this. And it literally was one class. I was like, yeah, this is sweet. Like, let's do this. And then that led to, the passion that I now have for it. And so, that was almost like 9 years ago, and been doing it, training it since. But again, it didn't start like, let me go for my black belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, it doesn't start with that thought. It starts with, let me try something new.
Yeah, 100%. How many hours in are you?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably, I've guesstimated between 4,000 and 5,000 hours, which is crazy because they say 10,000 hours in mastery. I'm like, dang, I'm going to be so good in 5,000.
5,000 more.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's real though. It definitely is. It takes that long. Well, I think I appreciate this conversation. It did make me think about my journey quite a bit, and I genuinely didn't even think about that. That first day, experiencing that with Mike McCarthy, and then the fact that you were there is even more hilarious to me because I would have never thought about that.
And we got free sandwiches that day. You remember that?
Oh,
Like someone
yes.
came in. This was like, it was like some catering company like couldn't find the company they were trying to bring sandwiches to, and they're like, "Oh, you guys are having an event. You want these?"
Yeah, I do remember that. You want some sandwiches? That's so funny. It was a beautiful day. Mike did a great job.
Yeah.
He did a great job, and the whole thing was really impactful. Clearly.
Yeah.
So, for those of you that are close to us in Lakeville, Massachusetts, come out and check us out. We're now open. recoverwithintention.com. You can book there. I'll leave you with the process for our labs, because people ask me that every time. And the process goes like this. You're going to come in, you get changed. You're going to step into our intentional rinse that was built so that you could be intentional about your recovery. It's 1 minute long. It's hot or cold water. You can stand underneath our rainfall shower and spend that 1 minute releasing. I'm going to not intentionally use all the R words, but I might. Intentionally releasing all your emotional residue, right? Repairing and resetting yourself to get ready. And you're going to step over, walk into our cold tub branded commercial cold tubs. One of them is set at 42 degrees with moving water. And that's going to constrict essentially every cell in your body on purpose by design. It's going to help you to breathe, learn the process of being uncomfortable and what that looks like, and breathe and allow yourself to prove to yourself that you can do it, however long that takes, whether it's a minute or 2 minutes or maybe even 3. And you're going to get out, and you're going to walk into our clear light sanctuary infrared sauna. And the cool thing about the infrared sauna is that it's going to heat the body more than the air. So you will be warming up, and once you constricted all those blood vessels and all of the stuff that no longer serves you moves out of the cell and into the bloodstream, you're now going to use that to heat yourself back up and allow that to escape completely, removing all the toxins. And you can do that 1, 2, or even 3 times. You rinse off and go about your day. So that's our process that we designed for the community members, and we would love to see you down there.
Nice. Yeah, well said. Yeah, and please try it out. Don't knock it till you try it. The cold tub is a little hard. Sauna is sometimes a little uncomfortable, but both of them, myriad health benefits, myriad mental benefits. I mean, it's profound to have that spike in dopamine that lasts 4 to 6 hours, 300% for cold tubs, above baseline. That's 300% more motivation to do the things that you don't want to do, right? And that's not anecdotal. I mean, you look at the anecdotal evidence, but that's also clinical evidence as well. So, yeah, go check it out. I think it's such a great opportunity.
Thank you. And catch us next time. Drop us a line. I'll let you know how to get there.